Bueno, vamos a comenzar con la segunda conferencia del día. Va a ser presentada por nuestro sponsor Oro, Unión Consorcio Formación, y nuestro sponsor Plata, Universidad El Bosque. Vamos a dar lugar a Avi Warshavsky, que es CEO de Mindset, para hablarnos de EdTech Transformational Market Impact. Esta conferencia de Avi va a ser en inglés con traducción simultánea, así que lo que les pedimos es que seleccionen en el margen derecho superior de la pantalla la opción más conveniente, el idioma original, inglés, o quienes quieran acceder a la traducción simultánea en castellano lo pueden hacer. Todo tuyo, Avi, bienvenido, muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here. And as mentioned, I'm going to deal with like an overview about EdTech world. And 1 second, I'll share my presentation. So just a few words about the place I'm coming from and the context I'm coming to this topic. I'm running Mindset, which is an EdTech innovation center based in Israel. We mainly work with startups. We incubate startups, we accelerate startups, and the work we are doing is a lot to do about really identifying the future. And in this, although my Spanish is not very good, in this sense, I'm relating to the previous lecture that I heard beforehand that I found very relevant for what I'm going to say. So I would like basically to talk about the opportunities and the blind spots that we see in the EdTech world right now, especially after 2 years of COVID. And maybe to start this conversation, we should ask ourselves, what do we mean, or what is the value proposition of EdTech solutions, EdTech startups, especially in this world of education? And I think usually when we are coming to ask this question, we are meeting two fallacies, two mistakes that we see in answering them. The first fallacy we can call the magic fallacy, and we can use here the famous Arthur C. Clarke third law that says that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And in a way, I think Arthur C. Clarke really catch something that we see a lot when we are speaking about innovation and about technology. Our expectation is for something magical. We're looking for something that is much beyond our experience. And if we see a lot of the innovative and shiny initiatives around us, a lot of them are using the phrase X. We have Google X, we have SpaceX, we even have Mindset X. And the X represents extraordinary, something beyond our reality. And this is sometimes become to be the main measurement for what we are looking at when we are looking on startups in general, and specifically on the world of EdTech. And I can say that myself, when I'm presenting in different forums and conferences, I find myself meeting the expectation to take a rabbit out of my head, to introduce something that is really magical. And this expectation usually are not doing very well to education. And we have a lot of failures that we had during the years. Those books that you're seeing right now on my screen, each one of them is analyzing a different set of failures in the world of education. Class Clowns describe some of the failures that were happening with the ambitions to solve all problems by technology. The Charisma Machine, which speaks about the one laptop per child, that was very dominant back then in the about 20 years ago. And Failure to Disrupt, a book that was written about 3 years ago, and again go through the the big stories of adaptive learning and online MOOCs, etc. And what all those examples has in common is the fact that they were looking for the magic. They were looking for something bigger than our lives, and this is a mistake. And the other failure or the other mistake is the totally opposite, and it could be described through this slide. This slide was illustrated by the end of the 19th century. It was part of an exhibition in France that tried to envision how the world will look like in the year of 2000. And as you can see, the illustrator really imagined educational technology. We have here a sort of a podcast that the kids are hearing through their earphones, but he could not avoid the existing structure of schools. And we can see here students sitting in a rows, and we can see a teacher, we can see textbooks, and the same fallacy that happened to this illustrator happens actually to many of the entrepreneurs and developers that are dealing with educational technology and EdTech. And this also can be called the curse of the familiar, and we can see it very easily through the icons that we are using in Word. Sometimes those icons are limiting us because we accept those digital phenomena to react in the same way that the old offline world is acting. And I think coming to understand what really is the value proposition of EdTech startups, and by the way, when I'm saying EdTech, I know that most of the audience are not school-oriented, rather workforce readiness-oriented. EdTech is a very wide range of technologies that are really dedicated to everything to do with learning. It could be in schools, it could be outside school, it could be adults, it could be preschool. And when we're coming to decide what is really the potential of EdTech startup, I think it's neither the magic nor the amplifier. We're not looking for technologies that just amplifies the old world and try to give us a faster version of the old blackboard that we had or the old textbook that we had. And what I would like to suggest is that the value proposition of an EdTech startup, and by the way, I think in every startup, is the sweet spot between blind spots and opportunities. When we are having this encounter between blind spot and opportunity, this is the place where startup can really suggest something with value. And to explain this point, let's take first an example which not coming from the world of education. Let's take Uber. And Uber, of course, I don't mean necessarily Uber. It could be any other service of cabs, but those services like Uber are a great example of the encounter between blind spot and opportunity. We had a blind spot, and the blind spot was that we took for granted the way the world of taxis is working. We took for granted this institution, this social institution. And the entrepreneurs that started to think about those solutions that are location-based and based on smartphone could see that, or could bring doubts into this picture. So this was the blind spot. And the opportunity was that the time that those solutions were evolving, the technology improved in a way that we had location-based technologies. We had smartphone in each person's hands. We had connectivity strong enough that could really provide those kind of services. And then came a solution that really, from the one hand, understands or sees the downside of the existing taxis world, and from the other hand, uses the new technologies. And when we are coming to education, and especially for workforce readiness education, I think the blind spot is about the distinction between the world of work and our personal lives. And on the slide, we can see a picture from the marvelous series that was produced by Apple TV. Whoever didn't see it yet, I really strongly recommend. And this series is like a dystopic story about a future in which people are going through sort of a surgery that makes them be disconnected. When they are at work, they don't know anything about their personal lives, and when they are in their personal life, they don't know anything about their work life. And this story is an excellent metaphor for I think what's happening to all of us for the last 200 years. Like we learn to live in two universes. One universe is the working place, the organization that we are working at, and the other one is our personal lives. And we learn to distinguish between those two worlds. This distinction was not always here. It's something that was born more or less in the time of the Industrial Revolution. Until the Industrial Revolution, most of the people worked in the same place they lived. Most of the world was in villages, and people did not have to go to a certain place to work in. And beside many other stuff that the Industrial Revolution brought about, it also brought this phenomena that people are leaving their house and going to a different place, a different rules, and immerse themselves in an organization that constructs new laws. And what happened to us in the last 3 years, thanks to the pandemic, we started to see beyond this blind spot. We stopped taking for granted this distinction, and the outcome of this removal of this blind spot is the unbelievable numbers of the big quit or the great resignation. And the numbers that we see right now on the slide are from the United States, but we can see similar numbers or similar patterns in every country and in every industry. It could be factory workers in China, it could be high-tech workers in Israel, and it could be teachers all over the world. People started to relook on the way they are interacting with their working place. And this new observation also generates a lot of opportunities. And I think that the big opportunity is really rethinking, first of all, about our relationship with the institutions. And it could be our relationship of a student with school or learning with school. And it could be relationship of a worker with the organization he's working in. And the big opportunity here is that we are all rethinking about what do we want to do. We're rethinking about our own as individuals, and to be an individual that really control his life and is not run by the organization, you need to be a lifelong learner. And under this promise of becoming a lifelong learner, I think there is a huge opportunity for everyone who is leading an EdTech initiative. And I would divide those one big opportunity to 3 sub-opportunities that we're seeing right now in our work in mindset. And the first one we can call the human-machine pedagogy. Human-machine pedagogy is a phrase that speaks about a whole bunch of new disciplines that were not existing about 10 years ago. And right now in the working space, we have a bunch of those kind of new professions. For instance, we speak about user experience. It's a combination of words that I'm not sure was existing 10 or 15 years ago. It's a new profession, and there is no traditional way to learn this profession. It's not like learning math or learning engineering. And even speaking about engineering, I think the understanding is that when we are learning to interact with machines, with computers, we are learning something much deeper than just programming. And to make this point, I think it's strongly related to the idea of how do we see technology. And in the past, we saw technology as a tool. We had a hammer, we had a saw, and we used those tools and move forward. But today, we have a relationship with technology. Technology is not anymore a distinguished tool from ourselves. It's something that we have a very deep and wide interaction with. And to illustrate this, we can, each one of us think about his own smartphone or his navigation apps, or et cetera, et cetera. And Mitch Resnick, one of the leading people in MIT Media Lab, speaks a lot about what do we learn when we are coding, and it's not just, we're not just learning to code, we're not just learning to do things with the machine, we're also coding our own learning, and we're learning strategies, and we're learning problem solving, and we're learning communication skills, and all those bunch of things that we are learning is a part of this new field of new professions. And those professions are not just about programming. It's a whole family of disciplines that can be divided into 4 groups. There are the disciplines of protection, like cyber education, media literacy, that help us to protect ourselves from fake news. There's the family of creation, and coding, of course, is the most obvious one, but it's also about user experience and user interfaces and design and programming with no code, which is a new trend that really enable us to code without actually coding. There is also the family of, or the group of understanding, and in this field we have, for instance, data literacy. We see a lot of data out there. We need some way to really understand how to use this data. And last, we have all the communication skills, which again are new, like storytelling, new media, e-activism, and all those disciplines, I think, has in common 2 things. First of all, they are evolved through our interaction with technology, but second, there is no traditional way to learn those things. There are not teachers in educational system that can teach those disciplines. There are no structured way of teaching those things in universities, and for this we need really a different kind of solutions that are agile enough to adapt themselves. For instance, cyber education, which is one of the topics that we have startups in Mindset, is the whole corpus of cyber education is changing about 30% every year, which means that 3 years we have also almost a new discipline. And the same goes to all the other aspects here. So we need some different kind of solution, and startups are the perfect match to close this gap. And just to see a few examples of startups who are really dealing with these challenges in a very effective way. Plethora is about computational thinking, and the Cyber Squad is about cyber education, and Data Playground is a playground that teaches kids using data. The second opportunity is about something that we can call technology of the self, understanding that when we are dealing with learning for the new world of professional life, it's just not just about adopting new knowledge about a very specific technology or a very specific discipline. It's a lot to do with making ourselves much more relevant for this working world, and this is about what it used to call in the K-12 space social emotional learning. It's about what we used to call in the past soft skills, and as we can see, this trend is extremely promising right now. The trend of apps that are working about, for instance, mindfulness or self-productivity, and this also translates to business. And we saw in the beginning of this year a huge deal around the company EverFi that deals in those places, and I think we could not say the same a few years back. And the last trend, just to talk about the geography and the investment landscape, and this domain of EdTech, which I think the most invested part of it is the world of workforce readiness, has changed dramatically in the last 3 years. Just to give an illustration, we had about 100 mega rounds, more than $100 million each in the last decade. Half of them happened in the last 2 years, and I think this tells the whole story. Like all world of investment in education reborn in the last 2 years, and also changes geography. We used to have China as the biggest player in the field. And as you can see, China shrinked because of regulation that was happening there. And we have now still a bigger market that includes, beside of the United States, as it grew very dramatically, also Europe and Latin America and India, which were not on the map a few years back. Europe has leaped dramatically, as we can see here. And I think maybe the most interesting part is what's happening in Africa. In Africa, we have the Global EdTech Startup Awards, the GESA Awards that Mindset is running together with about 30 partners across the globe. And today is the biggest EdTech startup competition. And as you can see, almost 20% of the application came from Africa, because Africa, first of all, evolves very strongly, but it's also a place that the new training ways are really helping it to frog leap and close the gaps faster and faster. So I think I conclude here and just say that beside of those 3 opportunities that we can see in our work in Mindset in this field of lifelong learning, I think startups have a very important role because they are very trained to act in a world of uncertainty. And we are now in a world that really changed rapidly. And in this world, the way to suggest the right solutions is not following the NASA tagline, which says failure is not an option, rather following Samuel Beckett's famous quote that calls us to fail again and fail better. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias, Avi, por tu presentación, por tu predisposición y los aportes. Hasta la próxima.